Yesterday, CBS Sports' Shehan Jeyarajah joined the program, and he was asked what his expectations are for BYU's record through their next 4 games, which, by the way, are at East Carolina, at Colorado, and then home to West Virginia, and then at Arizona. This was his response.
I'd be disappointed if it's not 6-0. If BYU is the defense that I think they are, I think that they should be able to put all of these teams away. I think they should be able to fly through those first 6 games.
So, do you agree with Shehan? Would you be disappointed if BYU wasn't 6-0 going into the Utah game?
I don't know if you fly through any of these games in the Big 12. I obviously, as a fan, yes, you're disappointed if you're not 6-0. Realistically, can they sweep those 4 with a young quarterback and an offense that's still trying to figure this things out, with the best defense in the league? They're going to have a chance to sweep all 4. Mm-hmm. Will they? I don't know. You know, we saw enough challenges in the red zone with Stanford, which was big up front and provided a little more of a test defensively the other night, to just go, oh, we'll just fix that in a day of practice and then we'll just score all the time. Through these next 4 games. I don't know if I want to see that. I got to see it against East Carolina to know they can go to Boulder and do it. So would I be disappointed if they're not 6-0? By nature of fandom, yeah. Would I be okay if they're 5-1, but getting better?
Yeah.
Yeah, I probably would be.
Yeah, look, let's start out by looking at this. BYU's next 4 games and their win odds according to the Football Power Index. At East Carolina, almost 80% is what the odds say that BYU will win. Yeah. At Colorado, it's 71%. Versus West Virginia, almost 89%. And then at Arizona, of the 4, is the lowest percentage, but it's still at 63.5%. So I'm like you. I'm glad that you phrased it the way that you did. As fans, you're always disappointed when your team loses a game. So from that sheer fact, yeah, I think you'd be disappointed just because you never want to see your team lose. But I'm like you. If this team goes into the Utah game at 5-1, I'm not going to be disappointed, especially with the circumstances that played out leading into this season. Yeah. Now, I think disappointment probably sets in if you're 4-2. Going into that, I can certainly understand that. But look, Shehan Jeyarajah has been very high on BYU, and I love the reason that he gave, because of what he's seeing from this BYU defense. And I know some people want to sort of brush it aside or minimize what this defense has done because of the opponents. Don't look at the opponent. Look at the production. Even bad teams typically will produce more than what the BYU defense has allowed Portland State and Stanford to do. I love the reasoning he gives that this defense, and I do believe that, and Jerem the other day used the word elite. He said elite, I said legit. I think it's beyond legit. If they can continue to do this as this season goes on, and I have no reason to believe that they can't, then yeah, they have every opportunity and should win these next 4 games.
I think about Ty Detmer's first road game. Ty's probably the smartest quarterback that ever came through here, right? And he won the Heisman and did all those things. As a redshirt freshman, he goes into Wyoming on the road and throws 4 interceptions in the second half, and we get beat by 10. Life on the road is different. We haven't seen Bear on the road yet. And Bear, now as a true freshman, even younger than Ty, experience-wise, is going to go on the road at East Carolina, and we'll see. And then he's going to go on the road in Boulder, and we'll see. We know one thing in Boulder he's not going to be able to hear. Mm-hmm. So what does that mean for him? And then, over in Tucson, they're looking forward to BYU coming down there too. That'll be probably a night game, but it'll be a hostile spot. And number 47 hasn't done any of that since high school, and who knows what crowds he played on the road in high school. So there's just enough mystery before you can stamp absolutely. But what you can stamp is the defense is going to keep them in games. Yeah. And Will Farron is not going to miss kicks. And so you got a shot, certainly, in those 4, and you certainly have a shot at beating Utah here. Yeah. We're just talking about leading up to the Utah game. But East Carolina, they throw the football. Okay, BYU's played two teams that don't throw the football. So we'll see how that goes with the secondary. Colorado's all bent out of shape from the bowl game, but man, they're all over the place.
Most of those guys didn't play in the bowl game.
Quarterback is this Friday. And then West Virginia has been a big disappointment. They got to come out here. And again, Arizona with a quarterback, and they're kind of a mystery team down in Tucson. But that's an interesting next four.
Which of those four, now, according to ESPN's FPI, it says that the toughest game for BYU will be at Arizona. And I disagree with that. I think it's probably one of the next two. And I kind of agree with something you said earlier. I think we're going to know a lot about the Colorado game and how difficult that may be based off of how the game at East Carolina goes. Yeah. If BYU can go into East Carolina, and you say, oh, it's East Carolina, that is going to be a tough environment to play. Again, BYU should absolutely win that game. But I think we're going to know a lot more about this team after the game in Greenville that can help us sort of evaluate a little bit more on what we think could happen at Colorado. So of the four games, which do you think is the toughest? Because I think it's either East Carolina or Colorado. I'm leaning towards Colorado right now.
I think Colorado for a whole bunch of reasons. And again, Colorado's motivated by what BYU did to them in the bowl game. But they just don't have a Heisman guy over there, right? And their quarterback, again, they're not sure who their quarterback is. But that's the Big 12 opener. That's why that's the biggest. East Carolina is the preparatory game to Colorado. If you had to lose one of those two, lose to East Carolina and get it right for Colorado, because the Big 12 is, you want to get to the Big 12 championship game.
Yeah.
That's the ticket to the promised land. You don't want to lose any of them, but I think Colorado is the game over the next four.
All right, our question of the day, in reference to Shehan Jeyarajah's expectations for BYU's record through the first 6 games, would you be disappointed if BYU is not 6-0 going into the Utah game? The first response coming in on X from @DrTPhD says yes with an exclamation point. With how well our team is playing, especially on defense and special teams, looking at the schedule we have now, it's an expectation. Go Cougs, and then 1, 2, 4 exclamation points. So he really means it.
He means that one. Chris on X. I'm disappointed after any loss, but a close loss at Arizona could be both understandable and a good way to light a fire in these guys before the Utah game and the rest of that 4-game gauntlet. That's right, the next 4. We're talking about these 4, then there's the next 4, and that's a different thing.
Let's worry about the next 4.
But these later. 4 are to get ready for the next 4. And you're preparing a quarterback to do some things he just hasn't done before, which is take a Division I football team on the road and beat a team, and then take them into a more hostile environment on the road and beat that team. Yeah. And if Bear does that over these next 3 weeks, with the bye week and then those 2 games, BYU is going places.
Yeah. All right, let's get your responses. We'll get to more of them coming up a little bit later on in the program. You can continue to weigh in on X, Facebook, and on Instagram.
Fox Sports' college football analyst Joe Klatt broke down the current state of the Big 12 from his national perspective on his show, The Joe Klatt Show. Big 12 had a rough weekend, so here's a portion of Joe's comments.
This is a big year for the Big 12 in order to argue that, hey, we need multiple spots as automatics. This was always going to be a really important year for the Big 12 Conference. Brett Yormark, I think, knows that. And that's why Saturday was, to put it honestly, like, that's a bad Saturday for the Big 12. And it's going to put an immense amount of pressure on the teams now that will be carrying the banner for the conference, because now those teams can't get eaten up through the schedule like they did a year ago with this league that has a lot of parity, which has a lot of teams that are similar to one another. And we always anticipate a lot of these games in this conference that are going to come down to one score.
All right, so he's got Utah, TCU, Iowa State, and Texas Tech as those guys carrying the banner, the class of the Big 12. Shehan also spoke about the state of the Big 12 from a national perspective through the first 2 weeks yesterday on the show, and let's watch that clip.
Last year, we had this conversation all year that when the teams that have high expectations falter, I think it just hurts the Big 12 in a way that it doesn't hurt other leagues. And Arizona State going on the road and losing to the worst team in the SEC, I think is going to be something that follows the conference, not just short-term, but long-term. Kansas State, also one of those teams that was in the top 20. They, of course, have a really poor start to the year.
Okay, so there was a lot to unpack there. The Big 12 right now will have one team in, right?
We know that.
They're not going to get two in the way it looks if you just look at the top. They're not in the top 12. The number 11 team got beat at Mississippi State. So, yeah, Arizona State, we learned a little bit about them on Saturday. We've learned a lot about Kansas State. You know, they're not even on the radar anymore. Iowa State's the best team in the league as far as the rankings go. Texas Tech and Utah will meet next Saturday in an interesting game to see how that goes. But do you agree with these guys? Is the Big 12 in trouble in getting multiple bids this year?
Look, I have an issue with saying that in week 2.
Yeah.
There's still way too much football that needs to be played. Now, if this continues, then yeah, they are in trouble in getting 2. I think we all believe that the league should be a 2-bid league at least every year. That's not always going to be the case. I think the point that Shehan Jeyarajah mentioned in terms of, you know, look, this could have lasting effects. What happened this weekend, the reason it can have lasting effects is because you already have people who don't respect the Big 12 in general, that they think that it's the SEC and the Big 10 and then nobody else.
Right.
That nobody else does anything good except those 2 conferences. Now, can you overcome that? If that's how people are going to view it, probably not. But if you're willing to actually let the season play out and let some of these teams have a chance to bounce back, then I think there's still a chance. So I'm just very hesitant in week 2 to say that the conference is in trouble and that it's doom and gloom already.
Yeah. And I also don't think this has long-term ramifications. Let's say the Big 12 has an awful year as far as the national scale, but in the conference, you got teams battling every day, and the 2 teams that go to the Big 12 championship game have 3 losses or something like that. Long term, as you look forward, it doesn't, you know, if we have a bad year this year in the Big 12, well, when the new expansion plan comes out for next year and beyond, they're going to penalize the Big 12 because 2025 wasn't a good season. That's not how this thing works. Leagues go through cycles. Kansas had a horrible basketball season last year. Does anyone write them off for this year?
No.
Not a chance. They're like, that was, they just had some injuries. We're putting them back in the top 5 because it's Kansas and they've earned that. The Big 12 has earned their place at the table. The Big 12 has never said we are better than the SEC and we're better than the Big 10. They're just saying, hey, in this package of games, we want to be represented fairly, and in our case, we want multiple bids, especially if you go to 16. And that makes perfect sense. And the ACC's right next to him saying the same thing. And then after that, no one cares.
Right. Well, did you hear anybody after this past weekend say that the ACC's in big trouble because the Big 12 went 4-1 against them?
Yeah, and
I didn't hear that.
Had to rally to beat Troy.
I didn't hear it. Why is that just towards the Big 12?
These guys like to pick on the Big 12. I don't know what it is. Since Texas and Oklahoma left, all of a sudden it's like they can't possibly be competitive. Millions of people can't possibly want to watch them, yet they do. What's interesting is USC. USC gets swallowed up in the Big 10. In the Pac-10, Pac-12, Pac-8, whatever it was all those years, they were it. They were the story on the West Coast, whether they were good or not. Now that they're lost in the Big 10, no one even cares what USC's doing. So there's an example of over here in this conference, and you're a superstar. Now you're over here and you're just one of the teams. So in that argument of the arguments change, right? There's no West Coast argument anymore. And so then they just go, well, who's the next group over? Right. Well, let's pick on the Big 12. But you got to win games. You got to win games if you want to be relevant. And if you don't, like losing to Army at home for Kansas State, that takes them out the whole season. Yeah. And they got a lot of football left, but it'll all come back to, but you had a home game against Army and you lost. And these schools right here you're looking at, Klatt's Big 4, they got some tough games ahead, and all 4 of them play BYU, 2 of them in Provo.
Well, and look, if the 4 that Joel Klatt mentioned truly are the class of the Big 12 Conference, well, they play each other. Certainly we know that Texas Tech and Utah will play each other this year.
Yeah.
So, I mean, unless he's saying that a loss between one of those teams against each other is not going to hurt them because they are so superior to everybody else in the conference, it's not going to hurt them, then I mean, look, they're going to play each other. Somebody's going to pick up a loss here.
BYU is really good at finding a way to get in this group of 4 because they're so off the radar, and Kalani loves that. And he's off the radar again with maybe the best defense in the league, the best kicker in the country, and a quarterback that's figuring it out. Those 4 had better hope that Bear doesn't figure it out, because they've already got everything else in play, and motivated by being off Klatt's list and some of the others. Even early in the season, because that bugs, you're outside the AP top 25. You dropped a spot even though you won a game at home against Stanford. So there's all those things that help over here for BYU as we stare at those 4, thinking, well, those guys have to carry the flag. In November, let's revisit this conversation, and we'll see who's carrying the flag.
Well, and the thing about Bear, we talk about these next 4 games. I think it's most important for Bear to continue to progress over these next 4 because of the 4 that follow. Because he could be a completely different quarterback by the time you get to the Utah game and then those games that follow.
Yeah, it's on him, it's on his offensive coordinator, and it's on everybody on the offense to bring this group along. And we really don't even know how they've got to catch up. We really don't know how far back they are after the first 2 games. But we're going to get a glimpse at East Carolina to see just exactly where they are when they're on the road in an environment that's not full of their fans. And then we'll have it reinforced against Colorado, and we'll find out what kind of football team BYU has, let alone the other 15 in the league as they sort this thing out.
Take care of the bye week, and then go take care of business on the East Coast, and then we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and you know what Bear does best of all? Takes care of the football.
And plays the guitar.
Take care of the football and play the guitar. Man, you're going to have a great career here at BYU, singing and playing and living the dream.